What's going on, my super fam? Our lovely Nahida is basically exactly a week away from the time of her release, and so today on the channel we're having a video looking in depth into her pre-release analysis, going through her potential builds, and then finally see if Nahida is going to be a character that is worth it for you to pull at this point in time for your account, because I know that most of us out there, even me included, think that she is an amazing character. It doesn't mean that she's still going to be a fit for all of the account, because on one of my polls yesterday I did asking you guys who you're going to be pulling for this patch, or are you skipping. A whooping at least 20% of you is going to be skipping everyone and wait for some of the next banner. So we're going to be addressed that in this video. Okay guys, be real with me now. How many times have you been frustrated from all the struggle you have to go through in order to barely clear the abyss? Or you're like me guys who's too lazy to finish farming for oculi and chests, missing out on a lot of in-game rewards. If all these sounds too familiar to you, then I am sure you will be interested in SkyCoach, the leading platform for in-game services, and that of course includes Genshin Impact as well. They do AR leveling, chest farming, oculi collecting, as well as even helping you clear fully the abyss, and many more other useful services. For example, if you're stuck with Sumeru region chest and oculi farming, the SkyCoach Pro player will be there to complete it for you. Saves you a lot of time when you are too busy with school and work. They have really fast delivery, high quality services through a lot of games including Valorant, Apex Legends, World of Warcraft and others, and as well as bias protection, which is very important. With a 4.9 star rating and over 3,000 positive reviews, you can be sure to have a quality service with SkyCoach. Now check the link in the description of this video. It will activate my personal promo code that gives you a 10% discount for my subscribers. First off, we're going to be looking into how good Nahida is as a character. Now, assuming you all have read Nahida's skills, I won't be going through her skills in depth anymore, and just going to be covering the most important point. So basically what Nahida do is that she's going to be helping your team deal outfield dendro damage. Now how she's going to be doing that is through her hold E skill, which creates basically a camera and then marking any of the enemies within the frame on screen. The maximum amount you can go up to is going to be 8, and all of the marked enemies, whenever they are within a certain range of AoE, all of them will be linked. Now how Nahida is going to be dealing damage is that whenever you do a reaction damage onto the enemies that are marked, she will trigger what's called Tri-Karma Purification and then deal dendro damage as well. Now what's so good about Nahida's skill is that even if you're only doing reaction damage to one enemies, as long as all of them are linked, all of them will take dendro damage from her Tri-Karma Purification. And this is going to be the one reason that makes Nahida to be one of, if not the best off-field damage dealer at this point in time, because unlike other characters whose their skill are required to be big enough to deal AoE damage, Nahida doesn't need that. As long as her marked enemies are linked, she will only need to deal reaction damage to one, and still has the potential to take out the whole group. For Nahida's burst, it might become one of the best looking bursts in the game, but also what it does is that it acts as a buffer for her E skill, where if you have a pyro character on your team, her E skill damage will increase. If there's electro character on your team, the interval between her E skill triggering will decrease, and if there's hydro, her burst duration will increase. And this buff can goes up to a count of 2 characters of each element, and her burst will basically be on field 100% of the time because its base duration is only 15 seconds and the cooldown is 13.5 with an energy requirement of 50 energy. So you technically will never have to build much energy recharge on Nahida, and she will just naturally get her burst up through her rotations. Her passive talent is also really interesting because it has the potential to support her team as well as buffing her damage a lot. Now what you want to remember is that both of her passive talent will cap out at 1000 EM, so it's not going to be beneficial if you try to build Nahida way over 1000 EM. What her passive talent 1 does is that whenever your active character is within her burst, they will gain a 25% 50% EM from the party member with the highest EM, and the maximum number you can gain from it is gonna be 250 EM. And Nahida's passive talent 2 will give her up to 80% bonus damage as well as a 24% crit rate for her E skill damage. So both of this talent is very beneficial to the team, especially on her passive talent 2 that gives up to 24% crit rate. You can now worry less about balancing out your crit ratio, which is really good. So overall, I think that Nahida is a very amazing character that we won't be having in quite some time, especially because she is a Dendro off-field damage dealer. Because if you didn't know, off-field damage dealer support is usually more important than any hyper carry or DPS, because many of the time they are actually the character that deals even more damage than any of the character on field. Furthermore, with a huge lack of Dendro character right now, Nahida is basically gonna be on all of your team within Dendro reactions, so definitely her value is gonna be there for a long time. Next up, we're gonna be touching onto Nahida's best teams, or I would say more about her main roles, because for Nahida, she's gonna be in pretty much all of your Dendro reaction teams, from blooms to hyper blooms to burgeons to quicken and even to burning. Since her burst benefits her from being in with pyro character, she will be able to make burning teams do pretty well. Now of course we won't be able to demonstrate all of her team here because she's not out yet as of this point, but I will make a separate in-depth video on her team comps once she arrives. And so the other question regarding Nahida's team is gonna be how you want to use her, because she can either be an on-field damage dealer, in which I'm sure most of us will be running her optimally many of the time, but she can be on field as well. However, even if you invest in her normal attack and goes up to even crowning her normal attack, you won't be doing that much of damage off of her normal attack. So in other words, if she is an on-field character, she will be a driver for the team. Basically what it means is that she will be there to trigger her own E skill and help other sub DPS character deal off-field damage. And so the choice in which how you use her is pretty flexible, because she can be amazing in both of the options. And what's even more flexible is that her artifact builds and stat will generally stay the same regardless of what role she is in. The only difference will be that if you want to have her on field, you would just want to invest into her normal attack talent a bit more. And then talking about artifacts, we'll now touch on artifacts build. Now I must say that Nahida is probably going to be the very first character that have an interesting artifacts build. Reason being, you will most likely want to build 2 sets for your Nahida if you want to pull out her best potential in every single teams, of course. Now the reason why I say this is because you would want to build Deep Wood artifact sets as well as Gilded Dream for Nahida. Reason being is that if you're going with Gilded Nahida, she will require another character on the team to have Deep Wood set for the Dendro resistant decrease in order for her to perform optimally. Now the reason why I say this is because many of the team you will be building around Nahida won't actually have a character that runs Deep Wood. As for example, if you're running a Hyper Bloom or a Burgeon team, there's a high chance that Nahida is gonna be the only Dendro character on your team. And so that's when you want Deep Wood set onto your Nahida, as it will be performing a lot better than Gilded Dreams. Now of course you don't really have to fully invest into all of this and then build 2 artifact sets for Nahida. So generally speaking, Deep Wood set will be prioritized onto Nahida than Gilded Dreams, because even if you have 2 characters running Deep Wood set on your team, you're still going to be pretty much beneficial from all of that. That being said guys, the best priority will still falls down to how good your stats and substats is on the artifact sets. Remember guys, is that whenever building EM on Nahida, her max out cap is going to be 1000 EM. You don't really want to go above that because you're going to be losing out on damage. Now if you're running Deep Wood set, then generally it's going to be EM Sans, EM Cup and crit ratio circlet. However, if it's going to be Gilded Dream, then you can run EM Sans, a Dendro Goblet and a crit circlet, because Gilded Dream is going to be giving you a lot more EM than Deep Wood. Therefore you only need to build around 800 EM onto Nahida whenever you run Deep Wood set, and the rest you can focus on giving her more damage. Onto Nahida's best weapon, she actually has really good option guys, because even though her signature weapon the 1000 Dream is her BIS. The difference between this and other options of her won't be too much of a difference, because for example, right after, if you have the Kagura on your account, then it's actually also one of her best options as well, because Nahida can actually utilize the passive of this weapon due to her low E skill cooldown. Now of course, I know that most of us is not going to be having this weapon on your account because it has only been working for Yae Miko till this point. So her next best option is going to be the Solar Pearl. Especially if this is on R5, it will generally be her best option overall in every situation. Even better if she is on field because she can utilize the passive pretty well. Now if you have Lost Prayer on your account, then you can also use that, but it's only beneficial if she is on field. Therefore, if you're mainly using her off field, then the next option would definitely be the legendary Wizard. Whenever the buff of the Wizard is on, this thing will still perform better than any BIS option at this point. However, it does lose a lot of its value whenever it is on downtime. So of course, this weapon is going to be even best if you're clearing out the enemies within one rotation only. But if it is a long battle, then I would usually consider using other options, because of course you still have the option of the Sacrificial Fragment. Even though she can't always utilize the passive of this weapon really well, because the E skill cooldown is only 5 to 6 seconds, but the amount of EM it gives is pretty good. So if no one on your account is using the Sac Fragment, Nahida will be benefiting off of this really well. Now if you've already invested in Nilu's weapon banner and you've got yourself quite a lot of Wandering Even Star, then that's also a solid option for you to go. And then finally, the overall free-to-play option is going to be the Mappa Mera, because up until this point, I'm sure that most of us is going to be able to have at least a few copies of this ready. And of course, I just want to mention this also, the Magic Guide, a 3-star weapon. If you have it at R5, it can also a pretty good potential for a free-to-play option as well. Now, we'll talk about Constellation because I know that some of us will be considering it. Looking at Nahida C1. Guys, sorry to disappoint you, but her C1 isn't really that good. I wouldn't really go as far as to say it is bad because it still has its potential. But the main goal of Hoyoverse having her C1 here is to actually bait you to pull for her C2, as the benefit you're getting off of C1 isn't really that great. Now if you're looking at her burst extension bonus from the Hydro buff, since her burst is already having a 100% uptime, you're almost never gonna need her burst extension. And then the Electro and Pyro buff will actually be very situational down to your team build, as many of the time you're gonna be prioritizing teams such as Hyper Bloom or Bergian, where none of Electro and Pyro characters are available on the team. Therefore, it's not gonna be a maximum utilizing potential. Now, if you're gonna be pulling for Nahida's Constellation, you just might as well go up all the way onto her C2 because it's actually very good, giving your Dendro reaction the potential to crit, especially with a 30% defense decrease from Quicken, Aggravates, and Spread. Now, as you've known, defense decrease is one of the rare buff in the game, so Nahida C2 is gonna be giving her a pretty significant damage increase. C3 is pretty decent as well, increasing her E skill a 3 level. C4 is providing Nahida more EM. Now remember that her EM build is capped out at 1000 EM, so this is kind of like giving her more room to build other stats. And then for C6, basically this effect can be triggered up to 6 times and providing Nahida more damage. So overall, all of her Constellation doesn't really change her playstyle in any way and just increase her damage. You already know that there won't be much of endgame content, so the more you roll, the more you technically beat enemies faster and potentially just leading you to get bored with the game even faster. So pulling for Nahida Constellation is always your choice, but if you really want to see big damage number onto your Nahida, then overall her Constellation is pretty decent. And so that is basically us covering very in-depth into her potential build from her pre-release information. Now we'll touch on the most important question of this video regarding whether or not Nahida is going to be a must pull on your account. Now of course there is no must pull character in Genshin Impact, especially from the fact that the game is just too easy already and you can beat the game with any character when using in the right team. And so disregarding meta question aside, here's gonna be a few questions that I want you to ask yourself if you're still having trouble deciding deciding to whether pull for Nahida or not. And hopefully by answering these questions, it should give you more clarity on this. Is that first of all, you want to ask yourself, do you enjoy her playstyle and animations? Because overall, Nahida is gonna be a character that's suitable on an off-field position. Of course, you're gonna be using her an on-field driver if you want to, and then that also comes down to a question of if you really like how she plays and how her animation plays out, because this is a pretty large question regarding casual gameplay. And then next is that, do you actually like Nahida as a character? Even if I know that the majority of us out there do love her because she's just so cute and adorable, I know that there's also many of you who don't prefer her as a character. So obviously if you don't like a character, then even if you pull for that specific character, many of the time you wouldn't really want to use them on the team. So it's going to be technically a waste if you force yourself to pull for Nahida if you don't like her and don't like her stories. And then another big question is that, are you planning to pull for any other reruns that you really like and have been saving for quite some times now? Because of course, right after this patch, there's going to be the potential Scaramouche drop, and many of the long-awaited rerun characters, for example Hu Tao, Eula, Ayaka, and some other characters as well, might be making their appearance after quite some times. For Nahida, since she is an Archon, and if you have noticed, Archons usually have their rerun after 4 patches of their first release, so you don't really have to wait for too long if you do miss out on her in this time. Those are some of the main questions that hopefully would help you to have a better clarity of whether or not you want to pull for Nahida at this point in time. I hope that everything we've discussed here in this video have been enjoyable for you. Now if in the end you're still deciding to pull for Nahida but you feel that you're really lacking in Primogems, then guys, in collaboration with Paimon's Bargain, we're doing a 6,480 Primogems pack giveaway once Nahida banners drop. The giveaway is going to be held on my Discord server, link in the description below. So if you're new to the channel guys, be sure to subscribe and join my Discord server to have a chance to win Nahida. As always guys, I really appreciate you guys sticking with me till this part of the video. It really means a lot to me, and with that I wish you a super day and I will catch you on my next video.